Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a very important video for you about a new law that was passed regarding the drop rates of items in RNG loot boxes. This applies the CSGO skins, Call of Duty supply drops, the chest and League of Legends, and even the Overwatch loot boxes. There was a new law passed in China that forces game publishers to publicly announce all of the virtual items available in their cases and their exact drop rates. Not only is it the drop rate, but if you're playing a game where you forge or craft particular items like, say, League of Legends, they have to publish the crafting rates and the probability of you getting certain items from the crafting. But that's not the end of this law. The companies are also required to publish the actual drops and the actual results of their drops on an official game website or in-game. So they have to publish the intended drop rate of, say, 5% for a rare item, and then they have to publish the actual RNG drop rate that players got, say 4.5, 5 and 1, because there'll be a little bit of variation there since it is supposed to be random. They are required to update this every several months and keep records for up to 90 days in case of government inquiry. Whoa. That's all I can say. The implications of this law are massive. I can't underplay that enough. And you're going to say, okay, well, this is in China. It doesn't affect the US. That is not true whatsoever. This not only affects China, this affects the US, the EU, the rest of Asia, the Middle East. Anywhere where there's gaming, this is a massive change in the dynamic of gaming for many, many reasons, which we're going to jump into here today in the video. Another question you may want to ask me is, why are these guys passing progressive and pro-consumer laws? Aren't they supposed to be the totalitarian evil baddies that we all look down on? Well, gaming is super big in Chinese culture and in their industry, both of which are partially controlled by the government. China is not like the United States or EU. They're very heavily invested in molding and shaping their culture, and they control the industry in a much more strict manner than you would see in the US or in the EU. The gaming industry is huge in China. I think approximately 70% of all Android users and thus Android gamers are based there. It is the biggest gaming market on the planet. I've seen reports vary in size and scale of the market, but pretty much everybody agrees that China is #1 when it comes to video game revenues. And all of the video games, even the Call of Duty games recently, have moved to this RNG model. I mean, everybody knows we have supply drops in Infinite Warfare, but we've had them in Black Ops 3, Advanced Warfare, and now even in Modern Warfare Remastered. Pretty much every prominent online game has some sort of loot component to it now. League of Legends, CSGO, Battlefield, Overwatch, Hearthstone, pretty much all the mobile games are kind of loot-based at this point. And almost all of these major companies do business in China in some capacity. League of Legends, CSGO, Overwatch, consoles are in China now. So all of these US-based big brand name companies are doing business in China, which means that if they want to continue doing business, they have to publish their actual drop rates. Well, the drop rates in China, which might not be the same as the ones in the EU, US, or EU, but then with some testing, I'm sure the EU and US fans would be very, very upset that Chinese got better or worse drop rates, so it would be almost business suicide to have the rates different. I'm assuming they would be the same. That's what any sane company would do. And these loot items are huge business. I did a little bit of research online, just pulled a few of them up. CSGO revenue from last year was $200 million. And that's on a game that's several years old. When it comes to the Activision lot, you've got Call of Duty, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, that kind of stuff. That pulled in $600 million on its own. And don't worry, I'm going to talk about Overwatch in a second. League of Legends was $1.6 billion in 2015. Now, and that's not all loot-based because people aren't buying the Forged chest, but that's a component of it. Overwatch earned $600 million on PC alone, doesn't even count console. Now, that wraps in game sales as well, and not loot boxes, but I know the loot boxes are doing very well. Even Battlefield has battle packs now. I'm not sure how much those are selling. I don't think that's a big part of their model, but this is very, very big business to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. That'll affect our economy, that'll affect your gaming and everything else, and it's kind of an insidious business. It's kind of been a slow creep on gamers, a sort of price gouging or after the market thing, and a lot of people say these are gambling. This is teaching children how to gamble. You're rewarding gambling, blah, blah, blah. And while they're not quite slot machines in that they're not treated as a vice or a moral problem, and that people that buy supply drops aren't expecting to make a living off of them like the people that gamble their money on slot machines, they're not quite as innocent as, say, the claw or coin machines in the arcade as they're passed off to be. They can be expensive. The items have no physical, real value. They're only tied to the digital space. You're like basically getting permission to use these items, and rarely can they be resold. So one of the good things that this law does is it gives customers a much better idea of what they're actually buying, because right now we don't really know the odds of what we're buying. If you were to go and open up cases and boxes, now some game companies do publish the rates, but not all do. We don't really know the odds. Even when we're told the odds, we kind of have to take it from face value from the company, and the odds can be changed too on the fly, for better or for worse. They can literally just type in some different statistics and your odds can get much lower, therefore you have to spend more money. And personally, I would love to see a similar law passed in the USA or EU, and I think that would be good for everybody that games, because then they would get a much better idea of what they're actually buying. It may not be necessary to pass a law in the USA or EU now, because almost all of the big games are going to China, so we're going to be able to see the drop rates, albeit translated, and I think it's going to affect our buying habits as well. Though an interesting thing about this law, it can be bad for trade secrets. Showing drop rates allows for customers, investors, and even competitors to kind of calculate the price of each item. If you know it drops a certain percentage of time, and you have to spend so much money to get so many boxes, then you can know that this item will cost me approximately $50, $20, $100, $2,000, whatever it might be. Then in doing so, you can perhaps estimate the profit margins of the item, if you want to estimate development and deployment costs. And with a piece of info like this, you could probably back out a surprising amount of proprietary data about sector profitability, about sales, player bases, engagement rates, spending habits, a lot of very interesting things that I think a great many of these Fortune 500 companies would much rather keep secret, because it's these sort of internal financials, like for investors only, sign an NDA to see. It's their competitive advantage over everybody else, and you'll be able to back some of that out. But overall, this is an idea that I strongly support, and I hope that many of you would strongly support it as well. Maybe you can share this with a senator, with a congressman. Just like the video, share with a friend, subscribe, and tell me what you think if any of this sounds good. Drifter out.